I've never done a video dedicated to American muscle cars you can get here in the UK, mostly because there are so few of them. Our market literally has like 1 or 2 American muscle cars that you can buy brand new, and the rest you have to import over, and that costs a bunch of money. So today we're going to talk about 5 in particular you can buy for less than £30,000, all of which are American muscle cars to some degree. So it's under 30k. If you want to see it under 15 instead, then do hit the like button. 1,000 likes will make that video as well. Make sure you subscribe as well for 2 videos every week, and without further ado, let's get straight into it. We're getting started with what's less of a car and more of an absolute monster of an engine attached to a muscle car body shell, the 5th generation Chevrolet Camaro, with its 6.2 litre V8 engine producing 399 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 5.2 seconds, which seems underpowered compared to its engine, but that's pretty typical of American muscle. The Camaro name dates all the way back to 1966 and sits in the pony car class, designed originally to compete with the highly popular and well-known Ford Mustang. The name then died altogether in 2002 before its revival into the 5th gen that hit the market in 2010, almost 5 years after the concept car was shown. And of course there's now the 6th generation Camaro available as well. If you're a fan of Transformers, you may recognise it as the car known as Bumblebee, which was actually quite important for it gaining popularity amongst a younger generation of car people. This is particularly good when you consider it takes a lot of its design cues from its classic predecessors, as well as a bunch of other classic Chevys like the tail lights, which are inspired by the 1969 Camaro and the 1970 Nova. Considering how boxy they typically are, one thing you don't expect from muscle cars so much is aerodynamic efficiency, but the Camaro underwent extensive wind tunnel testing to get it to generate more downforce, like the gurney flap on the rear, and also direct air into the high temperature parts of the car for better cooling, like the engine bonnet vents. You'll find earlier cars starting at around £15,000 and 30 grand to get your nice 2015 model. Camaros are incredibly rare in the UK, so getting them worked on can be tough outside of specialists. Transmission problems, engine cooling and noises from the diff were the key issues I could find consistently on forums. Next up we have the 3rd generation Dodge Challenger, another well-renowned name in the muscle car world, with its 5.7 litre V8 engine making 375 brake horsepower and doing 0 to 60 in 5.1 seconds, not a massive difference between itself and the Camaro then in terms of pace. Like the Camaro though, the Challenger actually ended production of the 2nd generation long before this 3rd gen arrived, but in this case a really long time before. I'm talking 1983. The 3rd gen arrived in 2008, almost 25 years after the previous gen finished up. It was based on a modified platform from the Dodge Charger and designed with the original generation heavily in mind, which you can particularly see with the long grille and lights on the front end. It also had a bunch of Mercedes components used to save cost and make it handle a bit better, particularly around the suspension, all based around that massive Hemi V8 block up front. It's actually a great looking muscle car. I personally think Dodge did an amazing job, and that helped the car to become one of the most popular cars in its segment in terms of sales. Like previous generations, and as is customary for American muscle, each year comes with different features, too many to go through in this video, but I would aim for a 2015 model onwards personally, as they look a little bit more modern and the interiors are a bit more useful. This is an incredibly rare car in the UK, so if you want something to turn heads, this would definitely do the job and will run you around £23,000 at the bottom end, with £30,000 getting you a 2015 RT model. Misfires out of the Hemi block have been known, and some owners have complained that paint and interior build quality is subpar when you consider that these cars are supposed to be enthusiast cars. Taking 3rd today, we have the only car on this list which you can buy right-hand drive for those of us in the UK. It's the 6th generation Ford Mustang GT with its 5 litre V8 engine producing 410 brake horsepower and managing 0 to 60 in 4.6 seconds, not bad for a pony car. It was actually the first Ford Mustang to be marketed and sold globally, which shows the popularity that the Mustang badge has garnered, which always makes me wonder why they then attached it to an electric SUV, but never mind. This video is not about that electric SUV, this is a proper Mustang, which I'll be honest, for me is by far the best looking modern Mustang, as the 5th gen doesn't really do it for me, and the 4th gen is special in a completely different way, being the Fox body. Part of this would be because being a globally launched car, it had to compete with European rivals, particularly those from Germany. You could have a C63 AMG or an M4 or a Mustang, and the car had to be enticing enough in its own way to take any market share over here. Despite this attempt to make it more interesting to people around the world, it remains a very American car in its stylings and overall makeup, which is a great thing from a muscle car perspective, and it also draws a lot of design principles from the classic fastback Mustangs of the 60s, which is the exact era you want to draw inspiration from. These are listed from around £25,000, with 30k getting you a 2018 model with around 25,000 miles on the clock. There have been some complaints about body panel alignment, electrical issues, oil leaks and transmission issues, but in general the 5-litre V8 itself has been relatively reliable. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you are, there are 3 things I need you to do. One of those is to let me know in the comments down below what your personal favourite muscle car ever is. I think mine might be the Buick Riviera as one that I'd like to own, but there are others that are probably cooler, like the Mustang non-fastback from the 1960s. Hit like as well if you want to see the same video again at under £15,000, and subscribe as well if you're new, and with that we'll get straight back into the video. Taking second on this list is another pony car, and by far the hardest car to get a hold of here in the UK. It's the 7th generation Dodge Charger, which comes with that Hemi V8 we saw in the Challenger, a 5.7 litre V8 which makes 370 brake horsepower, the lowest on this list, but it still does 0 to 60 in 4.3 seconds. Now I said 7th generation is actually the update to the 6th generation LX car when it switched to the LD designation, with a bunch of exterior and interior changes which are reminiscent of the late 1960s Chargers. Like some of the previous cars mentioned, the Charger actually ended production in the late 80s before being revived with the LX in 2006, followed by the LD from 2011 onwards. One thing these cars are famous for is being police cars. In fact, if you play GTA 5, the police car in that is loosely based on the Dodge Charger, and you'll see the real thing in many US TV programs. It was actually a factory built spec for law enforcement called the Charger Pursuit. This new Charger also got the option of all-wheel drive, as well as being the first to have a bunch of new technology rammed into it, making it more usable, as well as safer for occupants than many previous generations. It's so crazy, as in the US these are so normal to come by, but here in Europe they're incredibly rare, and as a result of this I could only actually find one available within our price range for sale right now, and here's that example. It's not that they're typically more expensive, they're just so rare that you'll hardly ever see them come up for sale. There were a few recalls on these, but the Hemi engine is usually reliable in them as they aren't super stressed. The main scary problems come from malfunctioning brakes, so one to be aware of. Taking the top spot is actually not a muscle car by American standards, but in the UK it's heralded as a car with a muscle car's heart and a sports car's body, given our American muscle car market is so sparse. It's the Chevrolet Corvette C6, which comes with a 6.2 litre V8 engine producing 430 brake horsepower, taking it from 0 to 60 in 4.2 seconds, meaning that though it's quick, it's not actually at supercar levels of quick. It follows a long line of quite iconic Corvettes from over the years, but it was the first of all of them to come with exposed headlights as opposed to the pop-up one since the 1962 model, likely as a result of the same safety regulations that stopped the MX-5 from keeping its pop-ups. That 6.2 litre engine is the well-known LS3 block, shared with the Camaro mentioned earlier depending on which transmission it had. That LS3 was only available from 2008 though, as before that would have been the LS2 6-litre block. In terms of the car though, despite looking sports car-esque, you can still see some of the muscle car design principles, like the wider wheel arches, the quite boxy rear end, and definitely the interior. I've always thought that muscle car interiors look much beefier than your European equivalents, and the same is true with the Corvette. It was a highly successful car in racing too, winning the GTE Pro class at the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 2011, showing its prowess. You'll find this is anywhere from around 20k, with 30k getting you a 2008 model with around 40,000 miles on the clock. The LS3 engine is known to be incredibly reliable and a properly strong overall offering, which is excellent news. Instead, owners typically have more build quality and transmission related issues, including most notably on forums with the HVAC system. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, a quick reminder, do hit like, let me know in the comments what your favourite muscle car ever is, and hit subscribe. I'd appreciate all 3 of those things. Huge thanks for watching, and to the patrons for their continued support as well. We've spoken about American muscle cars in this video. If you want to see a video on some British cars instead, then do click up here and subscribe down here.